Today I want to share with you the top 7 cheap foods you need to buy now at Aldi. And the good news is that they're all under $1. Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferment, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning how to be a modern pioneer in the kitchen, consider subscribing to my channel and don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. Now, the first thing I want to mention is that I'll have timestamps in the description underneath this video, as well as the pinned comment covering everything that I'm going to talk about. So anytime you want to jump ahead, it'll be easy to do. And there's one more thing that I want to mention, because this is often addressed in comments where people will say to me, "Gee, Mary, you're just 2 people and maybe sometimes your son is home, but you seem to stock up on a lot of food." And some people express concerns over hoarding versus stocking up, and I understand that completely. I've been working for years stocking up my pantry, and basically now I'm at the point where I just replenish those things that I run low on. But usually when I go shopping at Aldi's or other grocery stores where I buy a lot of things to share with you about the prices, is I'm buying those things to donate. So I want you to know I would never encourage hoarding, and if you've seen my Prepper Pantry video series, you know that I always talk about doing things slowly, little by little, maybe buying an extra few cans of whatever you need on every grocery trip that you make. I never believe in clearing the shelves. But I also want to mention that if your budget allows, this is a really good time when you go grocery shopping to also maybe buy extra foods, not for yourself, but those that you can donate to your church if they have a food pantry like my church, or if you have a food bank or something like that in your area, because right now they're really hurting. They really need food that they can then give to the people that they help who really, really need food. So that's why I want you to know when you see me buying a lot of things, it's often not for myself or my family, it's often to donate, because when my budget allows, I try to do that, and I highly recommend that you do too, because these are times that the times that we're going through now are very difficult, and we really need to be available, so to speak, to help our friends, our neighbors, people in our community, whatever the case may be, because we're all in this together and we'll all get out of it together. But if we can just help each other right now during these difficult times, all the better. Alrighty, well, let's get started with number 1. I want to talk to you about some of the items I found for under $1 that you can use to stock your baking pantry. Now, I want to mention the Aldi that I was visiting is north of Austin. We have 2 Aldis in the Austin area. One is in a town called Pflugerville, and the other is in a town called Georgetown. And I've been to both of them, and they both pretty much look identical to me. So maybe the ones in your area are identical too, I'm not sure. But I just wanted to share that with you, and if you've never been to an Aldi before, make sure you bring a quarter, because you're going to need that for your shopping cart, but you do get it back, and be sure to bring your own bags. So 2 items for our baking pantry are baking soda and yeast. They had the fast rising or the instant type yeast, and they have the active dry yeast. Now, this was 72 cents, and these were 89 cents each, which isn't bad for 3 bags, and they had a lot of this. They also had a lot of baking soda, and baking soda is creeping up in price. So if you use a lot of this, whether for baking or for cleaning, whatever the case may be, for personal hygiene, this is probably a good time to stock up on this, because maybe it'll keep rising. I'm not 100% sure, but better to be safe than sorry. If you use a lot, get a couple of boxes. And then even if, like me, you make a lot of sourdough bread and you have a sourdough starter, it's always nice to have some commercially packaged yeast on hand. And the fast rising, this is good if you have like bread machines, but you can also use it in any type of baking. And then this is just sort of your more old-fashioned type yeast, but either one will work, for baking. So definitely, they're both under $1, and this is a good time to stock up, especially since they have yeast in stock, and they had a lot. And speaking of, I know when we went through the quarantine, it was very difficult to find yeast because everyone was making bread because it was difficult to find bread. And so you never know what the future holds. And I was just looking at the Farmer's Almanac the other day, and they said that at least here in the United States, I'm not sure about the rest of the world, but at least here in the United States, they're saying that we may be looking at a very harsh winter. So I hope not, but you never know. So this might be a good time now, while we have the weather on our side and can go shopping, to stock up on packaged yeast. Also, if you want, you can store this in your freezer, and this will extend its shelf life considerably, especially way past the the best use by date. I have often had yeast in my freezer that's well beyond the best use by date, and it's worked just fine. So storing it in the freezer can really be a smart thing to do. Number 2 are condiments, and specifically mustard. These were a great buy. This is only 99 cents and it's 20 ounces, so that's over 1 pound for yellow mustard, and it basically just has very simple ingredients in it. Water, vinegar, mustard seeds, salt, turmeric for coloring. So you can't go wrong with this. 99 cents. And these are sort of your little more gourmet-ish type. They've got the spicy brown and the Dijon, and these were 89 cents. So 99 cents and 89 cents, under $1. You can't go wrong for mustard. Number 3 are canned beans. You cannot beat the price on any of these. They ranged in price from 71 cents to 83 cents a can, and these are rich in protein. So this is definitely a great item to buy for under $1 to stock your prepper pantry. And there's so many things that you can do with beans. I have a video and it's all about meal extenders, and one of them are beans, and I talk about very creative ways to use beans to extend meals. So definitely give serious consideration to adding a variety of these to your pantry. And I want to mention, these are cannellini beans. They're sort of the Italian version of kidney beans. They're just white instead of red. And these make wonderful soups. And I have a video where I show you how to make an Italian, it's called Beans and Greens. It's an Italian soup. I grew up with it. And you just need a can of cannellini beans. If you have escarole, that's great. If they have that fresh at your supermarket, wonderful. But if not, you can use other greens. I've often made it with things other than escarole. So, and my family loves this. And I usually, what I do is I'll puree some of the beans with some chicken bone broth, put in my greens, and then use the rest of the beans to kind of fill it out and make it, you know, a little chunky. And they love it. And I'll be sure to link to that video, because literally, given the price of this, under $1, and maybe some greens that you've got in your what's the little crisper thing in your refrigerator, and you can, and maybe some bone broth, chicken bone broth, which you made for pennies, literally, which I'll link to that if you've not tried making chicken bone broth from the carcass of a chicken. And you have a meal literally for pennies, you know, no more than a couple of dollars. And you make some sourdough bread and everybody's set. So they have a wonderful selection, and they had a lot of canned beans. So definitely, I'm confident that whatever Aldi's you go to, you'll definitely see some. And now I want to mention, I've also got refried beans here. And I love the refried beans at Aldi, because it's so cute because it says traditional refried beans, and they really are traditional because they're made with lard. And you know that I'm a firm believer that refried beans should be made in the traditional way using lard. And so I think the fact that you can get this for under $1 a can, and it's made in a truly traditional way, this can't be beat if you like refried beans. And if you like making them homemade, you can definitely do that too. You can either get the pinto beans and soak them and then cook them and then use your own lard. That's definitely an option. And I have a video where I show you how to make lard, how to make it, how to render it from the leaf fat around the kidneys of the pig. But you can also, if you can't find the leaf fat, you can also use the back fat. And it's so easy to do. You should, if you can get the pig fat, it's so worth trying to make your own lard, or at least trying to render your own lard, because it's easy to do and it's a lot less expensive than if you buy one of those little jars of lard, and I'm talking about real lard, not the one that's hydrogenated in the box, but one of those little jars of lard. They can be pretty expensive. And so learning how to render your own is definitely a good skill to know. And one thing I want to mention about the canned beans at Aldi's, if this is of a concern to you, that they do say on the label that the lining does not contain any BPA, because I know some people are very concerned about that, but these cans are not lined with any BPA. Now, before we go into number 4, I just want to mention that at the end of this video, I've got some other items to share with you, food items that I bought at Aldi. They are over $1, but many were under $2, so I definitely want to share those with you as well. But let's get started with number 4, and that's pasta. You can never go wrong with pasta. That's the Italian in me talking. These are such a good buy, and if you have seen my previous Aldi video, you know that I said that if I ever get back to an Aldi, I'm going to buy more of these because I think these are such a good buy. These are different types of pasta that are in little bags like this. They're 7 ounces, but they are only 28 cents, and they are made from semolina. Pasta is not made, well, at least it shouldn't be made, but most pasta is not made from white flour. It's made from semolina. And I know if you've been with me a while, you've heard me explain this before, but in case you're new, semolina are the middlings of durum flour. So when durum wheat, the whole grain, is ground into flour, and they want just the durum flour, so they set that aside and shake out all the bran and the germ. So in essence, an all-purpose durum flour, for lack of a better word. And they have that. And then they've sifted out the bran and they've sifted out the germ. Well, there's a 4th thing called the middlings. And what the middlings are a little mix of everything, basically, for lack of a better explanation. But and they're not, people have said, oh, they sweep them off the floor. It's not really how it's done. But it's sort of a mixture of a little bit of the durum flour, a little bit of the bran, a little bit of the germ. It's just sometimes the casing of the germ. It's just a little mixture of things. But the bottom line is it's actually very nutritious. And so you never have to go wrong when you look for pasta. Just make sure that it's made from durum semolina, and you're going to get something that is nutritious. So that always makes me happy to see that. And all of these little packages are made from durum semolina. Now, they've got the elbows. You can make some wonderful macaroni and cheese with this. And these I just love. And I really think that this is the perfect thing, especially because it's non-perishable, so it's great for your working pantry or your prepper pantry. And it's a wonderful type of food to donate because you can get a lot of them and they can be spread amongst a lot of families. And just 28 cents, and it's a high quality product. And I love these little ones because you can make a homemade rice-a-roni with this. That I don't know if you've had a chance to see that video where I showed you how to make a homemade rice-a-roni. I'm actually in the video breaking up all of the pasta to make it look like this. But how convenient is this? It's already broken up for you. And these are wonderful. You can just dump these right into a soup. And they look very much like, when you use these to make a soup, it looks very much like those box soups. They're not in the can, but they're in a box. And you can buy those, and I guess maybe you just add water. I don't know, maybe they include a dry bouillon or something like that. But they have these little pieces of pasta. So when you use this to make a soup, if you're kind of trying to convert your family from a processed foods kitchen to a traditional foods kitchen, and in doing so, and you're making more things homemade, but you kind of like them to look a little more like the store-bought, these can really come in handy. So that, I thought, is just excellent. I really can't say enough good things about this for 28 cents. And then, oh, and I wanted to say that the Aldi that I went to had a lot of these. There were a lot of boxes. So I'm hoping that'll be the case at your Aldi as well. Now, normally I've just seen, and it was only my second time to an Aldi, but in the first time, all I saw was the elbows and then these little broken pieces of spaghetti. It's like a thin spaghetti. But this time when I went, they had these cute little alphabets. And I just adore this. I remember my mother having things like this and making soup for me when I was a little girl, and my making soup for my son when he was a little boy. So I think kids really like this, and I think it's always fun if you can feed children with something that's fun and something that will get them to maybe be eating a soup that's made from bone broth, and maybe you've put some beans in there for protein or vegetables, whatever the case may be. And then you'll have all these little letters floating around. It's very cute. I remember when my mom would make it for me, my cousin as well. My cousin and I would try to find the letters to spell out our name and things like that. So that can be a lot of fun. And again, this is a 7-ounce package too. They're all 7 ounces. And for 28 cents, you buy 2 of these, not quite a pound, but close, and less than, on a per ounce basis, less than what most pastas, most spaghettis and things like that are costing at Walmart. Then also they had a lot of this pasta in the box as well, and these 2 were on sale for 75 cents, and then these 2 I believe were 92 cents. And this I thought was terrific, and it was on sale. And again, they had a lot of this. Maybe that's why it was on sale. But this is the tricolor rotini. It's the kind of the corkscrew, and it's nice because it's got the red, green, and the traditional pasta. The red being made with tomato, and I believe the green is made with spinach. So that's nice. And this looks lovely, especially it being summertime. You can do a pasta salad with this. It looks very pretty. And then the other one was the farfalle, which is, some people know it as bow ties or butterfly. I think farfalle actually means butterfly in Italian. But again, for the price, how can you go wrong? Now, they're not a pound. These are, I want to be fair and tell you, these are just 12-ounce boxes. But you can stretch it, and I mean, it's not going to be a pound, but it can almost, be used in any recipe, calling for a pound of pasta, because you can just kind of stretch it. And maybe put, a few cut up fresh vegetables, like if you're doing a pasta salad, and just stretch it a little. But I felt that was a good buy for 75 cents. How can you go wrong? Now these that are 92 cents, these boxes actually are a pound. And again, they have the rotini. It's not the tricolor, but it's the corkscrew, which I love that for a pasta salad. I just think rotini works so well in a pasta salad. And then here they have the penne rigata, which is the penne, but it has the lines in it, which is very good for catching sauce of any kind. And I love it because they put right on the front, made from durum semolina. So you can't go wrong. And that's 1 pound for 95 cents. And I'm pretty sure these were the only 2 shapes that they had, but they're both very versatile, so you don't have to worry. And then for these that were on sale for 75 cents, these also, I think these were the only 2 varieties they had. Now, before we move on to number 5, I just want to mention that if you're transitioning from a processed foods kitchen to a traditional foods kitchen, even if you're halfway there, whatever the case may be, you may want to head over to my website, and I'll put a link in the description, and I'll also put it in the pinned comment. But over on my website, you can download it, or you can download it to your phone, or you can print it out. It's 36 pages. So you can certainly print it out, and it's nice to have in your kitchen journal, but you can also just download it as well. But it's a 36-page list of all of the traditional foods that I consider essential to a traditional foods kitchen, and for what I call the 4 corners pantry. So it addresses what to stock in your working pantry, your refrigerator, your freezer, and your extended, or what we call the prepper pantry. And it goes through all of the different foods, where they should be stored, how they can be used. It's not just a list. That's why it's 36 pages long. But it can be very helpful to you as you try to kind of wean yourself off of packaged foods from the grocery store or pre-prepared foods. And also in that list, I have links that show you how to use everything you buy, how to cook with it, how to make meals with it, so on and so forth. So I don't just leave you hanging with a list. So it should be very helpful to you. So definitely check that out. Now, number 5 is protein. Now, animal protein as opposed to the protein in beans, but animal protein can be very difficult to find for under $1. But Aldi has Chunk Light tuna in water, and now it is only a 5-ounce can, but it's only 77 cents. And if you've seen my recipe for where I share with you tuna boats, which was something that I grew up eating at school, or recently I shared with you a tuna casserole that was from the Depression, and it's got biscuits on top. It's really cute and it's so tasty. We inhaled it. But you can make that with just 1 can of tuna like this. Even though technically they consider 5 ounces, 1 serving, you can stretch this. This is what I talk about in my meal extenders video. You can stretch this and you can just use this in that casserole, and you fill it out with potatoes and frozen veggies, or even if you've got some fresh veggies in your fridge, whatever the case may be. And now I want to mention to you, when it comes to protein, don't worry if you say, oh, well, gosh, 5 ounces may be spread amongst 4 people. That's not a lot of protein. But what you want to do is either in the recipe that you're making, or as a side dish in essence, or a side soup, you want to serve some bone broth. You can basically make fish bone broth and chicken bone broth, as I mentioned earlier, for pennies. Beef bone broth's getting a little expensive because the beef bones are getting a little more expensive with the popularity of beef bone broth. But you can make chicken bone broth, you can make fish bone broth. Literally, all you need is the carcass of a fish, and your fishmonger at the grocery store may be happy to sell that to you for $1 or $2. That's what I've found the case to be after they fillet fish, if your grocery store fillets fish as opposed to getting the fish already in filleted. And you can ask them, can they sell you the carcass? And they often will. It'll have the head and the tail and the carcass, and that makes really nutrient-rich bone broth, a fish bone broth. But you can serve that with any meal. And fish bone broth is very mild. It's very tasty. Or just do chicken bone broth if you like the idea of that. But the bottom line is, bone broth is very rich in protein. However, it goes one step further. It's a protein sparer, which means that it helps you absorb every little last bit of protein from any other foods in your meal that contain protein. So even if you don't have a lot of canned fish like this, or chicken or beef, whatever the case may be, whatever you can afford and incorporate into your meal, if you serve that meal with bone broth, everyone's digestive tract is going to absorb every little last bit of protein that is available to them from whatever protein is in the meal. So always keep that in mind. Now, I just want to take a minute to talk about this salmon. This was not under $1, but because we're talking about protein, I just want to bring this up now. This is Wild Alaska pink salmon. And this was on sale, and they had a lot of it. And sometimes I think maybe that's why it's on sale, because they have a lot and they have to move it. This was only $2.99 a can. And this is wild salmon. You can't go wrong for $2.99 a can. I get very excited when I talk about food and a good buy. And this is a 14.75 ounce, so 14 ounces and 3/4. So not quite a pound, but for $2.99, you can't go wrong. And I have recipes where I show you how to make fantastic salmon cakes using canned salmon. No one's going to know that it's from the can and not made with fresh salmon. They're delicious. And something that people, I think, may not realize is that canned salmon is such a high quality food, and especially this being wild. This is not farm-raised canned salmon, this is wild salmon. And what's nice is when the boats come in to the dock, and this is specifically, yes, this is from Alaska, when the boats come in and dock on the coastline, the fishery, what do you call it, factory or processing plant, it's right there. And often they're preparing all the fish in all the different ways that it needs to be shipped out. And often if there are pieces that are, a little too thin, to, maybe closer to the tail or whatever the case may be, but equally as nutritious as the rest of the fish, they'll right then and there prepare it and can it. The cannery is right there. So this is very good quality. Never turn your nose up, whether it's something you see at Aldi or something that you see at your grocery store. Canned salmon is really something great for the pantry. And also I want to mention for this salmon, if you do find this at your Aldi's and it's on sale for $2.99, this has a best used by date of July 2026. So this has really got a good, it's not like it was on sale because the expert was going to have a best by date by next month. This is good through July 2026. And if you've seen any of my other videos, I've shared with you that the best by date doesn't mean that it goes bad after that, or it's an expiration date. That's not the case at all. Here in the United States, and I'm sure in other countries, they have agencies that study these type of things, and they will say that canned foods basically never, in essence, go bad. Yes, will they degrade in nutrition in time? Will they degrade in taste over time? Definitely, but it can take a long time. So that's the good news about having a good supply of canned goods in your working pantry as well as your pepper pantry for backup. And I do have to tell you a story about dried beans that's very interesting. It might have been out of the Extension Service of the University of Utah, or State University of Utah, I think. I'm not sure. If I can find it, I'll definitely put a link in the pinned comment. But these scientists, like food scientists, had beans that were, I think they were like 80 years old or something. They were very old. And they cooked them up. They were able to cook them. And then they served them to the taste testers. But they also gave the taste testers fresher dried beans, that had been cooked up. And the taste testers really didn't think the taste was that significant. Maybe slightly when they were told, like they were asked, oh, what do you think of this? Pretty good. And then what do you think of this? Oh, yeah, it's a little better. But it wasn't significant, which was what was amazing. And when they did the vitamin and nutrition analysis, whatever food scientists do, they found that the nutrition was fairly well intact. Not as good as, the younger beans, but not terrible either. And so the bottom line in the article was that dried beans really do make a very good food for your extended pantry or your prepper pantry, survival pantry, whatever you call it. And so that's something to keep in mind whenever you're shopping for dried beans. And I know some of you say, oh, I don't like them, they don't agree with me, whatever the case may be. However, be sure to check out the video where I show you how to soak and sprout beans and then cook them, because if they are properly prepared, you have to keep in mind traditional cultures, many traditional cultures survived on beans for centuries, and they were able to eat them and thrive and so on and so forth, but they were properly preparing them. And that's what we need to do also. We need to properly prepare all of our food, all of our real food. And as long as we properly prepare it, hopefully then it does agree with us, we are able to digest it, and we're able to absorb the nutrients from it. So definitely, if dried beans haven't been high on your hit parade, so to speak, because I think if you try just once, and I show you a very clever way to sprout. I don't do it in the jar and all like that. I always am a little suspect of that. But I show you a very easy way how to do it in a colander, and then try cooking them, and then see if they agree with you. I think you're going to find that it's going to be a different experience. Number 6 is tomato products, canned tomato products. You can never go wrong with these. These are a meal extender and wonderful for the traditional foods kitchen. Now these are diced tomatoes, which I think are great because they can be added to soups, they can be added to thicken up a pasta sauce if you just have the basic sauce. You can put them on top of chicken, on top of fish. You can even use them as like a little, if you're making like a little bruschetta. anything like that. They're wonderful. And these are especially nice because, as I said, they're diced tomatoes. I like that size to work with. But these also have basil, garlic, and oregano. You can't go wrong. That's wonderful. And these were 69 cents. Plus, if you like making a lot of Mexican things, these are diced tomatoes with green chilies. So this is going to be very tasty. And you could even do kind of a mock Spanish rice, and you get your rice and you add this to whatever liquid you're adding in, and you really can make something very flavorful. And so definitely look for these too if you like a little spicy tomato type product. And this was 50 cents. Now this is a 14 3/4 ounce can, and this is a 10-ounce can. But this goes a long way because this has got quite, I mean, this has just got, if you've never had tomatoes with chilies, this has got a lot of punch of flavor. So you're going to be able to use this easily, just one can, easily with 2 cups of rice, you know, the raw rice, which will make a very abundant supply of rice once cooked. Or you could even just use this can with 4 cups of raw rice and then really make a very abundant supply of rice. This is really going to be a flavor booster. It's going to go a long way. So definitely make sure that you look for these tomato products and that you stock up on them now. Now, I do want to mention something to you about these cans. These have the pull tops, pull tabs. I'm not exactly sure what they're called, but you know what I mean. And these, I understand, may not have, well, all canned goods basically, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, don't go bad, but they can degrade, as we mentioned earlier. And it's my understanding that when they have this pull tab like this, they may degrade a little quicker than cans that don't have this. The sealing apparatus may be a little different than those that have absolutely no, you know, you have to use a can opener to open. So that is something to keep in mind when you are stocking things in your pantry, especially your extended pantry. Now, and also remember, your extended pantry doesn't mean that you never go in there. You're going to be using that with the first in, first out type method so that you don't have a lot of old food in there, not necessarily bad food, but not old food. And every time your working pantry starts to run low, before you go shopping, check your extended pantry and then shop in there first and refill your working pantry, and then see where you may be needing to restock a few things in your extended pantry. And when it comes to tomato products, I never worry because I use so many tomato products. I use them sometimes almost every day. Cooked tomatoes are really good for you. They're high, and please forgive me my pronunciation. You know I'm the queen of mispronunciation, but they're high in, is it lycopene, something like that? And they're so nutritious for our bodies and our overall health, our eyes, very good for men's health. So I always try to incorporate tomatoes, and specifically cooked tomatoes, because that apparently accentuates the benefits of the vitamins and minerals that are in tomatoes. So that in that case, if you use a lot of tomatoes and they do have the pop top, don't worry, because you're probably going to be going through them pretty quickly anyways. So both a good buy at 69 cents and 50 cents. I don't even think I could beat this at my local grocery store, which is a wonderful grocery store, but these are good buys. Number 7, canned vegetables and frozen vegetables. And these canned vegetables all ranged in price from 58 cents to 74 cents. So every single can here was under $1. And the frozen vegetables were 84 cents a package. Now the frozen veggies I am going to keep, but I wanted to share those with you because they were 84 cents a bag, and that's a good price that I may not be able to find at my local grocery store. So I did get some of these, and I've got a fun video coming up maybe over the next few weeks where I'm going to do something with these frozen veggies, so I think you'll really enjoy that. Now for the frozen veggies, I picked peas and corn and the mixed veggies. Now, these are only 12-ounce bags. It just seems, everything we've talked about this amongst ourselves in comments and whatnot, and on the community page, if you check my community page on my homepage at YouTube, we've talked about the shrinking sizes of things, and it's definitely the case. You don't see often anymore the 16-ounce bags, the 1-pound bags of frozen veggies, but even so, at 12 ounces, for 84 cents, that's a good buy compared to often what I can even find at my own local grocery store, which often has excellent prices. So I wanted to alert that to you if you're heading over to Aldi and you want to stock up on some frozen veggies. But the canned veggies, they had a wonderful selection, and they had a lot of them. I've got green beans, I've got mixed vegetables, I've got some chilies here. They have the little cans of chilies, carrots, corn, and the cut green beans. Plus, and I know maybe some of you are groaning, oh Mary, please no, not canned peas. But yes, I actually love them. And I've got, here they had the what they call very young, small sweet peas. They're very nice. And then these are simply sweet peas. But I'm telling you, cook these up, mash them with some butter and some salt. They're delicious. And I think, don't the British make something like this, and they call it mushy peas? And I got to tell you, I think that you serve peas like that, it looks like mashed potatoes, and it's got butter, and they're real flavorful. You put a little salt. I don't think anybody will turn their nose up to it, and may not really focus on the fact that they're canned peas. It works really well if you cook up the frozen peas, because then they have that really bright green color to them. But I also feel this is a great way to get protein into our family's diets if the cost of other proteins, the animal proteins, are going up, up, and up. We've got the beans and we've got peas, things like this, where we can incorporate some protein into our meals, and then you bring in some bone broth, and you're really doing very well. So canned veggies or frozen veggies, all under $1. You can't go wrong. Well, I promise you some foods under $2, and I thought that these were exceptionally good buys. These are uncured turkey franks, so there's no nitrites, no nitrates, nothing like that. And these were only $1.55. And you've got 1, 2, 3, there's 10 hot dogs in here, and they're made from turkey. That's something my husband really likes as opposed to beef. For $1.55 for 10 of these, that's fantastic. Now, there are only 6 here. However, these are uncured also, and these are Angus beef franks. And Angus, it's a very high quality beef. And these were $1.49. So you really can't go wrong. You definitely have more here with the turkey franks, but for $1.49 for uncured Angus beef hot dogs, these are fantastic. And then they had these, I'm calling them hot dog buns, but they're really, they say on the front brat buns. They're a little bigger than hot dog buns, but I kind of like that. They're a little substantial. And these were on sale for $1.29. Now, can you make these homemade? Definitely. And I have a video where I show you how to make hamburger buns. It's very easy to make. They're very easy to make homemade. And it's all in how you shape them, whether they're hamburger buns or hot dog buns. So if you want to turn them into hot dog, if you want to try to make those at home in your own kitchen, all you're going to do is just roll them into more of an elongated shape as opposed to a round shape. And they're going to bake up beautifully, and you're going to slice them. People are going to think they're store-bought, and which is a compliment, especially as you're transitioning to a more traditional foods kitchen. So how can you go wrong? Now, they did have hot dog buns for 99 cents. However, for the extra, what would that be, 30 cents, I really like the fact that these just seem to have a little better ingredients, and they were a little bigger, so I thought they would be nice to serve up, especially with these beef hot dogs, because these are a little bigger than the turkey hot dogs. So 2 good buys and a 3rd good buy. Now, I am jumping over $2. These are actually under $2, and these are over $2, but I felt they kind of went hand in hand, and these were both, especially the rice, a very good buy, so I wanted to share that with you. The next thing I want to talk about are beans and rice. I know beans are going up in price, it seems, almost every day, or at least the dried beans. But this, which we'll talk about the prices in a minute, but this white rice was an excellent buy. This is 10 pounds of white rice, and it's $5.09. So literally, what's it, just a scotch over 50 cents a pound. You can't go wrong. And don't worry about it being white rice. First of all, white rice stores really well, unlike brown rice, which can go rancid pretty quickly. But white, because it still has the bran and the germ in place. But white rice is wonderful to store. And you can make this with bone broth instead of water. So now you're adding some protein to it. Then also, when you're boiling up your liquid, your bone broth, put in some butter. And then now you've added a good fat. You could use some ghee or some butter or whatever you like to use. Then you cook your rice. Then when you serve it, sprinkle it with a little sea salt, and you have all the wonderful minerals. So you've turned something that's pretty basic into something that's now very nutritious. I see things like white rice as vehicles to be used to get other nutritious foods into our families. So that's why I don't poo-poo, so to speak, white rice. I say it's okay to have white rice. It stores well. It's high in carbohydrates, which there are times when people may need that, you know, if food is in short supply. It'll be very filling, and you can make it more nutritious. Now this is 4 pounds of pinto beans. Pinto beans are very popular here in Texas, and this was $3.65. So pinto beans are going up in price, like all dried beans, because I think people are recognizing the importance of keeping them in their pantries. But you can really do a lot with this and your rice. You know, you always hear beans and rice. And pinto beans are easy to cook, they're delicious. I have a number of recipes for you where you can cook up your pinto beans Tex-Mex style, make them very tasty. You've got your tomatoes with the chilies in them, and you can really create something that can be very enjoyable. And we're going to talk about making homemade tortillas in a minute, but if you're up for trying to make your own homemade tortillas and you've got some pinto beans, you've got some rice, you have a meal, and it's really not going to cost you that much. Yes, they are going up in price, $3.65 for just 4 pounds. Now, if you can buy them in bulk, you know, at one of the big sort of big box stores like a Costco or a Sam's, or maybe even Walmart, sometimes they'll sell large bags of them. But I know some of you have told me your budgets are so tight right now that you don't have the $25 or $50 that you would need to basically shell out to be able to buy a big bag like that. But I have a video where I talk about some clever ways, maybe going in with friends and then dividing things up and so on and so forth. I'll be sure to link to that video. But I know others of you have shared with me that you just don't have that type of social circle that's interested in buying the same type of things you do. So if that's the case and you have to buy smaller amounts, $3.65 for 4 pounds of pinto beans is still a good buy. These are great northern beans, which I really like. They're just a simple white bean. You can do so much with these. You can turn these into baked beans if you don't have navy beans. You can make the beans and greens soup that I talked about earlier if you don't have cannellini beans. So there's a lot, and they just make a great side dish too. You toss them with some butter or some olive oil and vinegar in the summertime when you want maybe a cold bean dish. You can cook these up, toss them with some olive oil and vinegar, some oregano. Oh my gosh, it's delicious. So there's a lot that you can do, but it's 2 pounds and it's $1.79. That's not a bad price. And I think these seem like pretty nice northern beans. You know, sometimes when you look at a bag of beans and you turn it over and you're looking at them, sometimes they look a little discolored or whatever the case may be. And so sometimes when you're shopping for things that are a bargain and you have one bag of northern beans that costs, X amount, and then another that costs Y amount, Y being maybe the more expensive one, you sometimes can see the difference, that the slightly more expensive one, the beans do look of a better quality. But I have to say, 2 pounds for $1.79, these look like pretty good quality beans. So definitely, if you stock dried beans, look for these at your Aldi's. Now these are all under $2. The pasta sauce was $1.69 a bottle, the broth was $1.79 a carton, and the peanuts were $1.95 for a container. Now yes, can we all make our own pasta sauce? Do we all make our own broth or our bone broth? Definitely. Even when it comes to nuts, do we buy them raw in bulk and then soak them and dry them ourselves? Definitely. However, as I've shared with you in multiple videos, and one specific where I really focus on it, and I talk about multiple streams of food. Yes, you can make your own tomato sauce, but you want to make sure that you have some backups. Yes, you can make your own broth, but you want to make sure you have some backups. And the reason is, you never know what the situation's going to be. Maybe you're not feeling well and you're not up to making broth. Or maybe you're not able to get the chicken or the beef bones or the fish carcass or whatever the case you may need, or whatever the case may be for what you might need isn't available to you. So then where are you? But if you have backups, you're in good shape. And I think that's very important. Also, having backups can be very helpful when your budget gets really, really tight, or you lose your job. Situations like that, where maybe you're not in a position to buy the chicken, but because you have some backups, you're all set. You still have some broth. And I have to say something about the broths at Aldi's. They do have bone broths, but I found that I felt those, I'm not one to really buy pre-packaged or pre-bottled bone broth. Often the ingredients that I'm reading, I'm just not very pleased with it, whether it's from Aldi's or any grocery store for that matter. But often simple broths like this have simpler ingredients and are tastier. So if I'm going to stock broth, or if I'm going to buy broth to share with others, and that's another thing too, whenever I'm buying things to share with other people, I want to make sure that it's relatively good quality. And so that's why I'm not a fan of buying bone broth. But these really are quite tasty, and all things considered, they don't have a lot of ingredients. And for the price, to have these as backups, or to give them to people who simply don't make broth or don't make bone broth, these can be a godsend, because as we talked about with the rice, instead of using water, they can use a vegetable broth, they can use a beef broth, they can use a chicken broth. This is still going to add some nutrition to the rice, and it's also a wonderful starting base for making some soups. If you have some canned veggies and maybe a can of chicken, and you have this broth, you can whip something together, and that's especially nice if you're feeling under the weather and you're really not up to doing a lot of cooking. That's why I even say I have no qualm with even keeping some canned soups on hand. I really like the it's the Italian brand. The name is escaping me right now. It's very Progresso. It's very popular. But I love their lentil soup in the can. And I think that's a great thing to keep on hand. So know that I am never going to say, don't have your canned or your jarred or your boxed or jarred, in the case of the peanuts food. Always have multiple streams of food. Yeah, that's an insurance policy. Don't just focus on what you can make homemade or home can. Sometimes, I don't know about you, but wherever you may live, it's so hot and dry here, there's been no summer garden, so there's not going to be much canning. So I think that that's really important to know that you do have backups. And the nice thing when it comes to peanuts or any nut that you can buy, and I thought this was a great buy for $1.95, this is a pound, this is 16 ounces. And this is peanuts have a lot of nutrition, assuming that they agree with you. I think they did have some other type of nuts. They might have been a little more expensive, but a quarter, it says 10 servings, so about an ounce. I'm thinking maybe about a quarter of a cup generally is the rule with nuts. That's 7 grams of protein. That's excellent. And they're saying that there are about 16 servings in here if you go by the fact of just eating a quarter cup. So you can stretch this, you know. And if you are a fan of Nourishing Traditions, like I am, Sally Fallon has discussed that if you're not in a position where you can soak and then dry your nuts, and the whole reason you're doing that is to help deactivate some of the anti-nutrients contained in nuts that can make them difficult to digest, and difficult then for us to absorb the nutrients from them. But she'll often mention that if you're not in a position to do that, then look for dry roasted peanuts. Now, for more foods under $2, this can of pineapple was $1.28. Now, something that I've noticed is that canned fruit, the price of canned fruit has just been going through the roof. And the only one they had at Aldi that was packed in its own juice was the pineapple. And this is a pretty good sized can. This is 20 ounces, so that's 1 pound, 4 ounces. And it cost, as I said, $1.28. And it's packed in 100% pineapple juice. So you can't go wrong, because the other canned fruit that they had was packed either in a heavy syrup or a light syrup. Now, if that's your only choices, don't worry. If you don't want that syrup, I generally don't like it because it's usually made with high fructose corn syrup, and that is a highly processed type of sweetener. So what I prefer to do is, if that's my only choice, I like then to open the can and then rinse off the syrup best that I can. But the nice thing about this is that it was already packed in its own juice, in pineapple juice. So I think this is going to be quite tasty. And you can do a lot with this, because this can be, we often have pineapple just cut up like this from a can for dessert. And if you want to do like a kind of like a Hawaiian-inspired meal with chicken and maybe some veggies, this can come in handy. This is so perfect for doing something like that. And then you can reduce the pineapple juice to make it a little sweeter and make like a little nice sauce, and then put that over your rice that you've cooked in bone broth. So you see what you can do. There's a lot of options, even though foods might seem on their face just like a can of something. There's so much you can do with canned food. So for $1.28, definitely look for this if they have this at your Aldi's, because it is packed in its own juice. Now, this was over $2, but I wanted to share this with you because these are sunflower kernels and they were $2.65. But this is 1 pound. And like the peanuts, these are high in protein. A serving of these, which is also about 1/4 cup, and there were 15 servings in here, which I think is fantastic. And it's 6 grams. I believe that's correct, 6 grams. I need my bifocals. But the bottom line is it's rich in protein. And for $2.65, and you're getting 15 servings, this is a good buy. Now, this was also a little over $2, but it was an exceptionally good buy, and so I wanted to share it with you. This was only $2.25. This is masa, and this is the type of flour. It's a corn flour, but this is the type of flour you need to make corn tortillas. And the reason that it's called masa, I mean, I believe that means corn, but the reason that it's sold in this special way is because it has been treated with lime, not the fruit, not lime juice, but lime, I believe it's a mineral, because treating it with lime allows all of the B vitamins, in essence, to be released from the corn from which masa is made. And if corn tortillas are a staple in your diet, you want to make sure that you're able to absorb the nutrients that are in that corn tortilla. And so that's why masa is prepared the way it is, because often corn tortillas are a staple of different people's diets, and you don't want them to become nutrient deficient. And so our ancestors learned how to properly prepare. We talked about that before, properly preparing food. But what's so great about this? This is a 4.4 pound bag, and you could make so many tortillas with this. You could also use this as a thickener if corn agrees with you. And corn tortillas are very easy to make. I'm sure there's lots of videos on YouTube, and I'll definitely we'll definitely make them, together here one time. But you can't go wrong with buying something like this. Make your own corn tortillas. Then you've got your beans. They also had black beans at Aldi's, and they were also reasonably priced. I didn't buy any, but that's definitely something to think about. And then you could make your own homemade corn tortillas. You could stuff them with black beans, and then you could do your rice with the chilies, and you have a wonderful meal, and it's really not going to cost you very much. Yes, you're going to be making these things homemade, but really a lot of the work involved in terms of preparing the beans is the beans are doing the work, because they're soaking, and maybe if you decide to sprout them, they're sprouting on themselves, and the cooking of them again doesn't involve a lot of work. You just need to be thinking a little in advance about preparing these foods. Rice cooks up quickly, and then you can make these tortillas quickly. So always be thinking in terms of the meals that you can make, the meals that you can pull together with real foods, where, as opposed to buying the corn tortillas at the grocery store, which are going to be more expensive. You might get a box of them for $2.25 or even more, and you just maybe at most you'll have 12 in the box. And they often have ingredients, unfortunately, in the pre-prepared corn tortillas that are not necessarily ingredients that we want in our traditional foods kitchen. So always be thinking of real foods. Start compiling your recipes. I have a lot here for you on my channel and on my website, same name as my YouTube channel, Mary's Nest, where you take real food and you turn it into something that would be very similar to what you would be buying already pre-prepared for you at the grocery store, but for a lot less money. I wanted to share with you these jams because I think these are such a good buy at Aldi. I bought them last time, and I'm buying them again. I bought them again this time. These are $2.49, which is a very good buy for jam, especially when the first ingredient is the fruit. And I've shared that with you that I make a lot of jam, but if I'm going to buy jam, I always make sure that the first ingredient is fruit. And these jars are 9.95 ounces. They're 75% fruit. You can't go wrong for the price. They've got raspberry, and this one is blackberry, and this one I believe is strawberry. So they had an abundant supply of this. So hopefully if you head over there, you'll definitely see these. And for $2.49, you can't go wrong. And then if you're getting jam, you may want to get peanut butter. Now this is a good bit over $2, but it's under $4. This was $3.89, and it's 16 ounces. So you're getting 1 pound of peanut butter for $3.89. This is organic, and it's the creamy peanut butter, and all it is organic peanuts and sea salt for $3.89. You really can't go wrong. They also had almond butter, if that agrees better with you. It was a little smaller jar, I believe, and it was a little more expensive. I don't buy almond butter, but they did have that. And they had a plentiful supply of this. They had a plentiful supply of the almond butter. They also had other types of peanut butters. And the reason that I took this one, I generally am not going to be a fuss budget about whether it's organic or not, but this one was just peanuts and salt, and so I really liked that. And I also, I read all the ingredients of all the other peanut butters. Some of them contained palm oil, and some of them, which isn't particularly terrible or anything, but most of them contained sugar. And so I really wanted to limit buying any peanut butter that had sugar in it. So for $3.89, you can't go wrong. Now, if you want more information on stocking your pantry, stocking your whole Four Corners pantry as well as your prepper pantry, and how to store your food properly so that it can last you a long time, be sure to click on this video, which I have a whole playlist, and even how to stock your prepper pantry on just an extra $5 a week. So you can't go wrong. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country Kitchen. Love and God bless.